Ready to go! Hello and welcome to Telewizja Republika. Since December, Ukraine has made significant advancements in air defense, destroying at least 7 Russian planes, including high-value assets like the Beriev A-50 and Ilyushin Il-22. Last weekend, media reported advancing the A-50 aircraft to Russian-class Rachoń submarine, as this plane was reportedly shot down. The A-50 plane, critical for air defense system detection and coordination plane, is a rare asset, with Russia reportedly having fewer than 10 in its fleet. The Il-22 used for airborne command and control is also limited in number. These losses, which could amount to over $600 million, signify the major blow to Russia, impacting its air strategy and reducing sorties. As Kyiv Independent writes, Ukraine's success in this is partly attributed to advanced air defense system received in 2023 from West, such as the US Patriots. The loss of this aircraft not only has financial implications for Russia, but also affects trained crew members, with the A-50 typically having a crew of 15. Ukraine's upcoming acquisition of F-16 jet fighters from Western allies is expected to further bolster Ukraine's air capabilities. In the meantime, in a recent operation in the southern Ukraine, the Ukrainian military successfully destroyed a Russian OSA, a WASP, anti-aircraft missile system using an American-made HIMARS rocket launcher. Kyiv Post reported on this lately in this article. Despite the poor visibility, a drone crew, as we read from the 73rd Maritime Center of the Ukrainian Special Operations Forces, located the OSA, which had been used against Ukrainian troops, and relayed its coordinates to HIMARS operators, and then, boom. The strike resulted in the complete destruction of the anti-aircraft system, as confirmed by footage released via Telegram and verified by Kyiv Post analyst. The OSA, a Soviet-era automated all-weather air defense system, is designed to protect motorized rifle and tank divisions. Developed in 1960 and operational since 1971, the OSA AKM variant carries 6 missiles with a high probability of hitting air targets. That's the way OSAs look like. We got plenty of them in the post-Soviet area. Most of the post and former Soviet camp armies have this kind of equipment. The cost of a single missile for the OSA is estimated at $56,000, while the entire system's value varies between $1 million to $10 million. Earlier, in January, Ukrainian forces also destroyed a Russian Solznepio heavy flamethrower system valued between $6.5 million and $15 million. Bravo! Congratulations, guys. As civilized world cheers for Ukraine after hitting Ruskies here and there, General Freeze has taken over the front lines. The Kyiv Post discusses the impact of cold weather on the Ukraine-Russia conflict, noting an increase in Russian soldier surrenders and reduced ground attacks. The fighting in Ukraine has slowed down across most of the front due to severe cold weather, with an increase in Russian prisoner of wars reported. Kremlin forces have reduced their ground attacks because of the harsh conditions and poor frontline supply. Nothing new in this war. As we know, Ukrainian forces maintain their position with ongoing artillery and mortar exchanges. The cold weather has grounded drones and limited soldier capabilities, affecting both sides. There's a notable increase in Russian surrenders attributed to poor conditions and morale. Also, nothing new. As the weather is cold, the political environment is hot. As we have found out in 2024, Estonia plans to cease funding Russian language education as part of its transition to a unified Estonian language education system, announced Prime Minister Kaja Kallas. That's an article about it, and that's pretty obvious because of the history of Estonia being taken over by Russia for years. That is designed to bring all Estonians into a single information space and promote the use of the Estonian language nationwide, of course. The decision explained by Kallas in Parliament is not an attempt at Russification, but rather an effort to avoid having two separate education systems. The transition endorsed by President Alar Karis in December 2022 will begin in 2024-25 academic year with kindergartens and primary schools. By the 2032-33 academic year, all educational levels will have transitioned to Estonian. Currently in Estonia, where Russian speakers comprise about 25% of the population, children can study in their native language until 9th grade. In high schools, over 60% of subjects are taught in Estonian, while about 40% are in Russian. This kind of ethnical tensions are always a fuel of Russian hostile activity. We see it all over the spaces where Russia used to rule in the times of the communists. So those ethnical clashes are used and amplified by Russian active measures. And that's the cause why we talk about the Suwałki corridor. Speaking of which, and that's an article that was published by the Bild on our site Rachoń.com. We talk about it. A confidential Bundeswehr document reported by Bild presents a scenario where Russia might initiate aggression against NATO with focus on the Suwałki gap between Poland and Lithuania. In both of those countries, Russia tries to use and amplify the same kind of tensions as we were speaking about in case of Estonia. According to Bild and the paper that they obtained, as soon as 2024, Russia may attack Lithuania and Poland. The document outlines a detailed timeline predicting the mobilization of forces and a sequence of military and hybrid actions leading to a heightened state of conflict. It highlights the strategic movements and the buildup of troops and equipment, demonstrating the potential scale and progression of a military standoff in Eastern Europe, basically in the Eastern NATO flank. What's my take on all of this? Well, the Russian way of understanding war differs from ours. Escalation and de-escalation of military tensions are just devices in the Russian toolbox. The ultimate goal is to constantly spread its sphere of influence. In that context, the fact that this particular place, Suwałki Gap, is hard to conquer by military means by Russia does not mean that Russia won't attack it in this way or another. The Bundeswehr paper describes a possible scenario of this kind of escalation. But the other context is the ongoing war in Ukraine. German intelligence agencies, by leaking this kind of paper, assuming it is a real thing, are sending a political message to the world. Russia is a threat to us, so it's better to appease her with Crimea, Donbas and partitioned Ukraine, not to provoke another war, which result is unclear. The only thing is that if only NATO's European states and US played the real game, the deterrence factor would leave no space for discussion. Russia is no match for NATO, if only NATO wants to resist. The thing is, not everybody in NATO, not everybody in Europe is on the same page in that context. You can join us on Rachoń.com, that's our website. Leave us your email, as we are posting daily analyses based on the open source intelligence that we subscribe and pay for it. Your daily updates from the front line of the war that is waged against our civilization. Because that's what we are going to talk about on my show. My name is Rachoń, this is Rachoń, and we roll in. And here to talk about those things, and not only those things, is one and only Joe Lindsay. Joe, great to have you again on our program. Great to see you again. You're in Lviv, I believe.
Yeah, hello from snowy Lviv. And as I always want to remind everyone, we have electricity and heat. Unlike last winter, this is a sign of Ukrainian, piece by piece, Ukrainian triumph. That this winter is much better than last year.
Even despite the general freeze taking over the front line, as we read in the several analytic pieces. Joe, before we start, here is something that you send us in the time when we haven't seen each other. I've received this message on my telephone. I was having lots of work, but I smiled like, that's the thing. That's the way that the drones that are financed, among others, by our viewers, but by you, our viewers. That's the moment I'm addressing you, our viewers. You are financing operations of those drones, and those are deadly machines, and those are machines that are helping Ukraine to win the war against the aggressors.
Yeah, and we can see right here, these are drones that actually the audience contributed to purchase. And, it's very strict rules. So those who give money to the foundation in the U.S., the tax-deductible donations, those things are only used for search and rescue and humanitarian purposes. But we have some very great renegade viewers who send me money directly via PayPal, which you can do at UkrainianFreedomNews.com. And that money, it's just money we can use for anything. And with that money, we can buy the FPV lethal drones. These little guys, only a couple $100, and a small $300 to $500 drone can take out, as we see in these videos, very expensive Russian equipment, including, as we see here, these Russian multiple rocket launchers that are worth about $15 million.
So that's the money that are well invested. Couple of hundreds of dollars can take out the Russian military stuff worth millions. What's the way it works? It's just a flying explosive. Do I understand it properly? That the drone has to approach the thing that it wants to destroy, and then bang, it explodes like a booby trap.
Yeah, actually, we just purchased a new batch of these drones the other day, and I was inspecting them. And I mean, the drones, some of them are now made here in Ukraine, but many of them were made in China, and they're used around the world for Instagram videographers, and they have a camera on them, and that's their main purpose. But Ukrainians, the first thing they do if the drones are made in China, they remove the Chinese software. So Beijing can't spy or can't give Russia information on the whereabouts of these drones. So they improve it in that sense. They add night vision to it, so you can see where they're going. The drones have a camera, and then they add explosives to it. And so each one of these little, for just a few $100 plus the cost of the explosives, and that's not something we deal with. But once that is added, so it's more than several $100s. But you add the explosives, and for very little money, you can destroy massive pieces of equipment. This also requires the ingenuity of the Ukrainians to be able to tinker with these machines and to be able to guide them to where they need to go. But it is when you listen to the audio, I don't know if we could play that, but to hear the Ukrainians cheering and know that those people who are cheering, these are people we know. The people we're helping are people we know, and these are people who were civilians on February 23rd, 2022. And there's even a husband and wife that signed up to fight, and that they're working on this together. But as you hear the excitement in their voices, they're not happy about death. They're happy about they're protecting their country and the idea of freedom.
This is actually the thing that everyone who follows the developments of this war had time to get used to, in a way, that each time I don't know, the rocket launcher hits the missile that is traveling through the Ukraine airspace. Each time the Javelin hits, I don't know, the attack helicopter or any other, I don't know, drone, we hear those cheerings like on a football match, and it's understandable in a way, because it's, well, the famous video of Kerch Bridge on fire being a mocked song of supporters of one of the football clubs is also about the same emotion. I mean, this is not being joyful about somebody's death. That's the part of the war, but this is a joy of being able to fight war while protecting your own country. I mean, those missiles go somewhere. Those missiles hit somebody's household, somebody's building, somebody's car, and each time it's being taken down, it's a reason to be joyful.
Yeah, and Miha, and think about, I mean, there was another Russian major missile attack on Saturday morning, and it was nowhere near as destructive as what we saw on January 2nd, but the Russians sent a lot of missiles over Ukraine. And, I realize, the missiles are always changing course, especially the hypersonic ones. And the Russians are able to create maximum angst because they'll send the missiles over almost every region of Ukraine before they try to hit their targets. And so part of that is to evade air defense, but I think it's also trying to make sure everyone is suffering throughout the entire country. And you just see just how sinister the psychological warfare is, and why it's so important. Why Ukraine? I mean, you need psychological victories. And by the way, I mean, the mood, as I've said, has been pretty heavy here the past weeks. When you realize that the support from Washington, for example, is not as serious as they claim. But there has been a huge morale boost the past few days with the reports on Sunday that Ukrainians, with the limited resources that they have, destroyed two of Russia's most powerful airplanes.
Yeah, Joe, that brings us to the issue that I started this program with. Could you explain our viewers what does it mean that Ukraine hit the A-54? Like 24 hours, it wasn't even certain if that is what really happened. We've heard some reports online also in Polish infosphere, but there was some downplaying of it. Let's wait until this information is confirmed, because if that's true, that's a big thing. Why?
Yeah, and that's always the case. You have to wait to be able to confirm it. And it's because this is the same thing that Ukraine has done with the Storm Shadow missiles from the United Kingdom going back to the end of the summer. When they do get these long-range weapons or ability to use them, they use them precisely and to great effect. And I think Ukraine is they're doing everything they can to show Washington and Berlin and the rest of the world, if you give them the tools, look what they can do. And so with the limited tools they have, they took out two of the most important planes in the Russian Air Force.
Do we know how they did that?
No, we're not going to, I don't think we're going to know about how they did it I don't think we'll know that for a while. There's plenty of rumors about it. But the best answer to that question is certainly with ingenuity, because they have limited resources. Some people were speculating maybe with Patriot missiles. I don't know. We don't know. But the main thing we do know is that the A-50, a $330 million Russian plane, which is I think Russia, they only had 10, now they have 9. It's very instrumental in guiding Russian attacks on Ukraine. These horrible, as we especially have seen since New Year's, those horrible nationwide missile attacks. The A-50 is very instrumental in that. Russia now only has 9 of these planes, $330 million. And then the Ukrainians also hit the IL-22, which is a command plane. And that's also very instrumental in the attacks. And so, what Ukrainians have been saying, and Ukraine's supporters have been saying for a long time, Ukraine needs the ability to hit bases deep within Russia, from which Russia launches these major attacks. They can't do that yet because they don't have the weapons for it. But what they are doing in their ingenuity is destroying some of the jets that are instrumental, or the planes that are instrumental in those attacks. And I think, this is, as the world many Western leaders sort of waver, Ukraine is trying to send a clear message. Look what we can do. We can finish this job. if you just give us the tools.
Yeah, if you are wondering, our viewers, if you are wondering what does Joe mean saying that this A-50 aircraft is instrumental in this kind of attacks, just think of it as a Russian answer to AWACS system, the flying command control of the air attacks, and basically this is the thing. Jeff Fisher, who is our guest, very often spent years working in this kind of course, Western-made planes. So basically, this is the awareness control, a situational awareness plane for a Russian military while Russia is attacking infrastructure with their missiles, with their airplanes, and all other devices that they use. Joe, but on the other hand, we are also having information about the effects of the winter, I wouldn't say break, because the war didn't stop, but we read the reports in the Ukrainian media that there is an increasing number of Russian prisoners of war, and in a way this war affects, and this winter time affects Russia more than Ukraine. I wonder if that's really the case, because I don't believe that having minus 20 degrees centigrade could be less or more harmful for any of the fighting sides. I think it's dangerous and bad for both.
Yeah, I'm always wary of those sort of press accounts that, from sort of inexperienced people that try to, as you say, every season of this is extremely difficult. That's the reality. And then, like we see it at a micro level, communicating with our friends at the front line to get them the drones, for example, and the other things they need. But the main question remains, and the thing that I think many people are trying to distract from, the main question is, does Washington, does Berlin, does the West have the will to support real victory for Ukraine? And I was, because yesterday was Martin Luther King Day, I always like to go back and reread Dr. King's letter from a Birmingham jail. And I was really struck by, he was so frustrated with what he called the white moderates, the people that were saying to Black Americans, just calm down. You just keep your freedom quietly, and we'll fix things eventually. And as I was reading Dr. King's frustrations, I was saying this exactly applies to what we have right now. Martin Luther King wrote in that letter from Birmingham jail, he said he had reached the regrettable conclusion that the white moderate is more devoted to order than to justice. The person who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice. And then he says that this moderate person says to the oppressed people, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I cannot agree with your methods of direct action. And as I read those words, I think of Israel, but I think of especially of Ukraine. And
as if this war could win itself. The peace and justice could be reestablished just like out of thin air. No, this is a war, so to end it, you have to win it, or based on what Ronald Reagan famously said, or lose. And when you lose, you are ending the war, and that's the easiest way to end the war. But we all can ask the question if that's what we really would like to achieve as a Western civilization. Joe, that brings me to my final question, and this question is related to breaking news, an article that rocked through the media waves of the world infosphere. It was also quoted, I think, in all of the Western European media. The German Bild article by a journalist who is very well informed about all the issues regarding the German policies towards Russia, Mr. Julian Repke, as far as I remember. He said that the Bild obtained a paper of the German military that assesses the possibility of Russian attack against NATO member states, basically Lithuania and Poland. Because the idea that is described in this article is that Russia is ready, or will be ready pretty soon, because there is a certain timeline in this article, to go from Belarus to Kaliningrad Oblast, what basically means taking over parts of territory of Lithuania and Poland, which is known by the name Suwałki Corridor. I wonder, what do you make of this article? It's not that it's something new, that we know that Russia is interested in attacking NATO and cutting off the Baltic states through the Suwałki Corridor.
Well, we have to remember all this war and everything around it. The geopolitics is both a poker game and a chess game, and there's lots of disinformation. By the way, the same Bild had a headline on January 9th, Putin's winter offensive fails. So very clear about that. But this, I wonder, in looking at the story about the fears that Russia could even attack Germany in a couple of years, is this meant to make people afraid, to say, oh, now we need to negotiate? But if indeed that's the goal of this, could you imagine if, and this is what Ukrainians keep saying, if Russia controlled a major part of Ukraine, think of all the resources and how empowered Russia would be to cause further damage. And even before we get to Germany in 2025 or so, as that article was suggesting, more immediately, look at Sweden. The past several days, I spent much time in Sweden, and my Swedish friends were writing me, and they're nervous. Several people wrote to me and said, do you think Sweden will be invaded? And they want to know about the experience here, because Sweden, they feel unprotected, not yet in NATO. They have a border with Russia. And, we think of Sweden as a safe and sophisticated society. It's much smaller than Ukraine, about 10 million people. And they have not had a war since the 18th century. So, Ukrainians were fighting since 2014. Sweden could easily be vulnerable. And so this is the question that, the world has to realize. Like, are we going to, the longer you let this drag out, the more havoc Russia can cause. And it would so easily be answered, Ukrainians argue, if you could give Ukraine everything they need to win. And Ukrainians have shown, whether it's with those Storm Shadow missiles in September in Crimea and the Black Sea, that they can get the job done if you give them the tools. That's why when Rishi Sunak was here in Kyiv several days ago, he promised a huge package from the UK, an enormous amount of drones and long-range weapons. So the UK, perhaps because they remember well the history of World War II, the UK is strong on this. But Washington and so many of our politicians and everyone running for office in the U.S. is absent. I just saw, I heard from my friend, the chief rabbi of Ukraine. He's in Washington right now, and he was meeting with several congressmen, including Thomas Massey from Kentucky, who doesn't support Ukraine or Israel, funding for those countries. And this is the question we have to realize. And maybe this Bild article can help people sort of have a thought experiment.
Yeah, I always, when I read this kind of semi-official statements, because it's an obvious leak from the German military circles, when I read this kind of documents, I always ask a question about the political goal and the political agenda of German elites. And basically, German elites are entirely or almost entirely strategically pro-Russian. The Nord Stream policies were supported by both major mainstream parties. And when we talk about the off-stream parties, let's put it this way, they are even more pro-Russian. So it looks, at least from my perspective, as I just mentioned in my monologue, like a kind of a curved ball and an information that if we do not feed Russia with the Luhansk, Oblast, Donetsk and Crimea, we are going to have a war at our doorstep. And this doorstep means Poland.
Well, I'll just say in response to that, because it can be scary, and you read that article and you can...
Yeah, that's the goal.
My friends in Sweden, but remember this, like, Ukraine hit the headquarters of Russia's Black Sea naval fleet. They hit the headquarters. They destroyed it. Last winter, we had no electricity, hot water, heat, and now Ukrainians have found a way to survive. Now we have, we're not living in the Middle Ages. And Ukrainians took out each of those jets that they hit was part of a fleet of only 10 or 12. So a huge portion of the Russian Air Force, of the key assets Russia needs to launch
Just
attacks on
think
any
about this
country.
blow as a blowing of 10% of this capability of
Yeah.
Russian
With
military.
very little resources.
Joe, thanks a lot. Maybe we got 1 or 2 minutes, so you can ask our viewers to send some fundraising so that you can finance, our viewers, you can finance some more frontline activities of the people who are fighting for their survival. You got 1 minute, Joe.
Yeah, we welcome support, especially for drones right now at UkrainianFreedomNews.com. And, you know, as it was a heavy feeling for the past weeks because of the big Russian attacks. But I think Ukrainians are, you know, they have found, okay, sort of a new spirit. It's still Christmas here. People are still singing in the streets and keeping their spirits boosted and remembering every day that, you know, anywhere under Russian occupation is total hell. And so anyone who wants to stand with free people here, we welcome support at UkrainianFreedomNews.com. And, you know, we can choose in this time to be the moderates that tell people to keep their freedom in check, or to say, hey, this is good and evil. It's very clear, and we can get the job done.
We are greedy for justice. Let's put it this way.
Nice.
Joe, thanks a lot. See you soon. We're gonna see each other next Monday. No, I'm going to have a vacation, ladies and gentlemen, for the first time for a long time. 1 week vacation, but starting only from tomorrow. So we're gonna see each other tomorrow. We are not going to see Joe on Monday, but next week we're gonna find a chance and opportunity to talk again about what's going on in Ukraine. Joe Lindsay, thank you very much.
Yeah, dziękuję. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. As you know, you can follow us on rachoń.com. That's our website. You can leave us your email so that we can get in touch with you on Substack. You can find a daily dose of open source intelligence reports that we read and that we try to describe and send straight to your inbox. So if you do want to stay ahead of the curve and be informed about the ongoing war against the West, that's the good place to leave us your contact. We see each other tomorrow. Stay with Telewizja Republika and do not forget to push the subscribe button, even though this channel is mainly in Polish. We do have our Poland Daily English section, so try to catch up and find the daily dose of Rachoń and not only on Telewizja Republika. Stay safe.